On this episode of Eager to Know, an insight into the world of practical movie effects and the power of imagining yourself successful at what you want to do. We all have a creative part of our brain, whether we use it or not, for generating new ideas, problem solving, and just viewing ourselves in this world. I am Ricky McGeckran, an artist living in Chicago, and I am eager to know and share with you all how people of a creative leaning have brought this way of thinking to the forefront and how it has shifted outcomes. John McDavitt is a muralist who paints large public murals. We met at an art industry event, and I immediately liked him. I found his energy fantastic, and he's really easy to talk to. His background is very different from mine, and I always like to speak with people who have had a different creative journey than me. One of the things that I found very cool was where he got the initial spark to his creativity. So John, tell me about your experience in special effects makeup, because I know that that is near the early part of your creative career, and it's something that I don't know anything about, and it sounds really interesting.
Well, I grew up with a mom who loved monster movies. So we watched all these bad monster movies, and I was a child of the 70s. And special effects were not stellar, always, most of the time in horror movies. And around 1977, Star Wars came out, and so that blew my hair back. I was like, wow, that was amazing. And I knew that I loved the creatures in there, and I had a dad who was really creative, and my dad, he was a mechanic by trade, but when he wasn't working, he'd take me out to the garage, and he'd be like, let's melt colored glass together. I've got oxyacetylene tanks, let's melt it down, or let's paint a mural, or like he would just do all of these very creative, crazy things.
That's definitely not let's toss a ball around. That's
no.
That is a unique father-son interaction.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, he was very creative, and he was very generous.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, hey, you do it, or you can do this, or you can be good at this. So I naturally then, I think I had a natural disposition to be creative, and I drew a lot as a child, but then having, that kind of fuel on the fire was really good. So anyway, special effects were getting better in the movies, and then my folks, when I was 10, they took me and a friend to see An American Werewolf in London. And I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
I have never seen it. I almost saw it about 2 weeks ago, and I opted for something else on Netflix, but I have not seen it.
Well, even the movie, it's a John Landis movie, and it's amusing. And
wait, John Landis is the Michael Jackson Thriller guy?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. So did he? Okay, so the whole Thriller werewolf was. I had no idea.
But the connection between those two guys, because John Landis also did Animal House and Coming to America, Trading Places, those movies, Blues Brothers. But so he had this idea, I guess, years before those movies that he wanted to make a werewolf movie. Okay. And prior to that, the first thing he had made was a movie called Schlock, and he found Rick Baker. And Rick Baker was this young, up-and-coming special effects makeup artist who made him up like some missing link was the deal with that. Well,
what do you mean a missing link?
The Schlock was the name of the movie, and the main character was the Schlockthropus, and it was a missing link.
Oh, I see.
And so that was the deal, was that he was like this missing link character running around. And so when American Werewolf in London came around, and it got greenlit, he hired Rick Baker to do the effects for it. And so I'm watching this movie as a 10-year-old.
And this is after Star Wars?
After Star Wars, about 3 or 4 years. And this dude turns into a werewolf, like on screen. We don't know even the concept of computer-generated effects at this point, right? There's no CGI, no pixels.
Right.
It's all, practical effects is what they would call it. It exists in real time in reality. So it's rubber stretching, it's jump cuts and edits, but it looks like this guy has turned into a monster.
And that's called practical effects as opposed to CGI?
Yeah, CGI or digital effects. which is
I've never heard that term, practical effects.
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I love learning something new, so that's great.
Yeah, something that exists in the real world. It's practical, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is you have to plan for practical if you're going to shoot it, and so they do a lot of digital now because it makes up for loose ends. You don't have to plan for digital; you do that in post production.
Right, and there's probably a lot of creativity that can happen post production.
Yes, and I would say you can throw money at stuff, and for me, a lot of the digital looks kind of lazy.
Okay.
Whereas if you have a practical effect, there's a design process and things have to be made and approved, and it just, I'm probably showing my age, but I like practical effects because people can interact with it. They're not looking at some ball on a stick
Right.
that then somebody in post-production is trying to make eyes match with.
Sure.
So anyway, I see this guy turn into a werewolf, 10 years old, and I walk out of the theater and I'm like, man, whatever that is, I want that. I want to do that. I don't know who did it. I need to know though, and I want to do that.
So that's interesting to me because most 10-year-olds would just be scared, whereas you were thinking about how was that created?
Yeah.
And I want to create that. So
Yeah.
you saw it as a creative exercise as opposed to just receiving it as a scary event.
I did. It's kind of weird, right?
That is a little weird for a 10-year-old, but
But I think it was, I was familiar with, I wouldn't have known his name, but I knew that Jack Pierce had done Karloff's makeup in the Frankenstein movies and that someone had made the creature from the Black Lagoon. And so to see a contemporary, right? I mean, I was 10, but somebody doing it in my time, I was like, man, that's what I want to do. I think I want to do that. And part of that also stemmed out of my dad encouraging me that I could do whatever I wanted to do. Like
Yeah.
I could be whoever I wanted to be.
yeah.
And it was a neat concoction of dad and mom, and then fantasy and art and moving that direction.
Now, your parents encouraging you to do whatever you want and be whatever you can be. Was that both your parents? Was that
Yes.
mostly your dad? And
No.
do you have siblings?
Yes.
And were they the same way with everyone, or was it?
Well, my sister's 8 years older than me, so she's almost a bit like an aunt.
Okay.
So I don't know. We're very different people. I hear the saying that every child grows up in a different house, or every brother and sister
Yeah.
grows up in a different house, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's the same parents.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, my neighborhood, it was all large families.
Yeah.
And most of the families, every one of the children is completely different.
Yeah.
And, they have different personalities. They're in different places in their lives, and they all had the same parents.
Yeah.
But I think, so that sounds like a really important part of your story is having this foundation around being, supportive parents and being able to be whatever you want. Because I hear that a lot from people as I interview people that are creative and successful in being creative, that is a common thread that I hear.
That's amazing. Well, I see it in my experience. I've certainly seen people who have not had the support and they're successful.
Yeah.
But there seems to be, at least in my personal experience, if I run into a wall or I'm having a bad season, I just have that kind of encouraging, optimistic spirit of my mom and dad saying, you can do this. It's okay. You can do it. And
Right.
I'm almost 50.
Yeah.
So that gets into the DNA somehow.
Completely. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, great. So it sounds like a couple things were happening here. We had some exposure to special effects as a young child. You had the support from your family and your mom and your dad that you can be and do anything. And so where did that lead you?
So I started to read all these different magazines that I would say would be like horror magazines, like Fangoria.
Fangoria, yeah.
There you go. Or Cinefex was another one that had come out at the time, which really got into the how practical effects were done. Now it's almost all digital. And I started to read about some of these different effects artists, Tom Savini, Stan Winston Studios, apart from Rick Baker. And back in the early middle 80s, you could call up 411 and you could ask for Stan Winston Studios' phone number in Van Nuys, California, and you'd get the number, and then you could call them. So,
and Stan Winston did the dinosaur,
Jurassic Park.
The Jurassic Park dinosaurs. What's the term I need to use?
He did the practical effects.
The practical effects, yes.
And they would call them what? Animatronics, right? Giant
yeah.
animatronics.
Okay.
And he had done what? Predator, Aliens. So many. I mean, they do all the Marvel movies today, or a lot of the work in the Marvel movies. But Stan passed away about 5-6 years ago. So I'd call a studio up. I was about 14 or 15, and I had a deeper voice. My voice had broken, and I would just ask, could I talk to somebody about, and the names of the people were in these magazines, so I could ask for Alec Gillis or somebody, and I'd get Alec Gillis on the phone.
And what was your intention? You just wanted to chat with them?
I wanted to know how to get to where they were. And so I just call these people up, this random kid.
So you wanted to be a special effects designer, developer, and you were just making phone calls.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
At 14 years old.
And I thought I was worthwhile talking to. Like, I had that kind of attitude. It was like, well, of course, why wouldn't they want to talk to me? I want to be their friend, and I want to work with them and do cool things with them. And so, yeah, it's crazy when I sit here saying it right now, but
I think it sounds great. I think it sounds
and it was
wonderful.
fun. It was exhilarating to make the phone call, and my heart would be racing. And it would take them a few minutes to realize I wasn't, a 30-year-old dude.
Yeah.
They'd be like, wait, so how old are you? 14. Oh, well, then they would start to tell me even more stuff. They'd be even more open and willing to spend time. I only have one person, I won't say who it was, out of everybody who just had no time for me. Everybody else had time. And to a person, each one of them suggested that I contact Dick Smith.
Okay.
Now, Dick Smith was, he's passed away a few years ago, but he was known as the godfather of makeup because he kind of bridged the gap between old Hollywood and new Hollywood. And where everybody was really secretive in old Hollywood, he just opened up the book.
Open source.
He was like, I'm going to share everything because I want the industry to grow.
Okay.
And he was so generous. And he developed prosthetic makeup as it exists today. Like he started to do all the separate components, and he did The Exorcist, he did the Godfather movies, he did Amadeus. I won an Oscar for that one. And so I called him up. And again, 15 years old, get his number, Larchmont, New York, call him up, and his wife answers the phone. Hi, I'm John McDavitt from Chicago. I was wondering if I could speak with Mr. Smith. Well, he's not here right now. He's actually in Chicago working on a movie. So I said, oh, okay. Well, yeah, I am in Chicago. And she said, let me get your number and your name, and I'll have him call you.
Okay.
So I was like, okay. I thought to myself, he's not going to call.
Right.
Like it was fun to call them. And so the next day, I had driver's ed. And so I don't know what that was from, like 9 to noon or something. So I get home, and my mom practically runs out in the front yard and says, Dick Smith has called 5 times. And I said, really? Okay. So I went in the house, phone rang, Dick Smith. Hi, John, it's Dick. I understand, according to my wife, you're really interested in special effects makeup. Yes, I am. Well, here's my address. Why don't you send me pictures of your work, and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
I'm not promising you'll be an effects artist or not. I want to look at your work, and I'll let you know honestly.
And what kind of work would you have done at 15 years old?
Lots of drawings and some sculptures.
In sculptures, in what would you use to sculpt with?
I used Roma Plastilina clay, so it's oil-based clay.
So it's a clay sculpture.
Yeah.
Okay. And you would be doing like heads or something?
Yeah, I was trying. I don't know that I really knew exactly where I was going with it. I was trying to do life casts, but there was no YouTube. You were just kind of figuring it out.
So you had an interest, and you were taking action. You were taking action with calling people, and then you were actually getting up every day and working on your craft.
Exactly. And And my dad, so I had this art teacher in middle school, Mr. Scott, and they had a mural program. And when I was between 6th and 7th grade, I got a wall to do a mural on. I mean, just myself, I had a 9 by 16-foot wall to populate in 2 weeks. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I fell in love with murals. And anyway, this teacher, Mr. Scott, told me, John, if you want to make a living as an artist, you can't take any jobs that aren't art related. And so that kind of burned.
At what age?
It was 7th grade.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Wow.
And so that really that made a huge impression in my heart. Like I was thinking, okay, this is something that needs to be protected. I don't want to get waylaid into something that isn't art related. And then about the same time, my dad shared with me, he worked at Electromotive, and he was a machine repair is what he did, which was kind of an artisan for any machine. If it needed to be repaired with electrical work or make a piece out of metal.
Hence having the welding in your garage.
Yeah, right,
okay,
right.
That makes sense
all
now.
of that. And he said to me, he said, son, I'm going to tell you something, and I just want you to hear it. And he said, I love my job. I make a good living. I left England to come to America to make a better living, and I own a house, and it's wonderful. But I trade my time for money.
Mm-hmm.
Don't trade your time for money. Trade your skills or your knowledge for money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I don't know what that actually meant to me as an 8th grader, however old I was when he told me.
Well, it definitely
that.
resonated because...
But it landed, yeah.
It landed because you told me that before. When we first met, you told me that story as well.
Yeah. Maybe I should just tell everybody that when I meet him.
It's a good story. It's a good story. I wrote that down, actually. That's
cool.
in my notebook, yeah.
So I had these 2 bits of information that I didn't necessarily know what to do with, but they were almost like fire for a caveman, you know? Work only art-related jobs, and don't trade your time for money. Trade your skill for money. And so here I am, really interested in special effects makeup. I'm a good student. I was fortunate. I didn't have to study real hard to be a BA student.
Yep.
And I wasn't a troublemaker. I didn't get in any trouble. It wasn't worth my time. But I was kind of done with school. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to go be an artist. And I really wasn't interested in college in regard to getting the degree because I just felt like that I don't know why I didn't think that wasn't the path for me, but I didn't. And my folks, being from England and Ireland, really didn't know a lot about the school system here and how it worked. So
okay.
When I graduated high school, my folks paid for me to be in Dick Smith's course. So he had this course, which was this 3-part thing.
Where was that?
Well, it was a course that would be, wherever you were at, he would send you all of his information, all of his...
it was like a correspondence.
Exactly. That's exactly what it's called. Thank you for the word, correspondence course. And so I had, all of these stories and anecdotes about Hollywood, suggestions on how to work in Hollywood, suggestions on how to sculpt, a video of him making up Hal Holbrook as Abraham Lincoln for the North and the South, and going into all the details of what it took to do that makeup. All of his formulas, all of his contacts in L.A., like all of this information that, I think at the time, I think it was $6,000, which was nothing, when you look in today's numbers. But that was part of my college. And then I actually went to a community college. And while I was there, I wasn't really digging the art courses. And I don't know that I was the easiest student to have.
Okay.
And so I switched to business. So I started to take accounting and business law and all these business management courses. And I needed to start making some money. So I had this airbrush sitting in my garage, and airbrushing T-shirts was kind of a thing in the late 80s, 89 I think it was. And so I just sat in the garage all summer learning how to airbrush. I had never worked 8 to 10 hour days in my life. And here I was working 8 to 10 hour days, getting paid nothing to figure this thing out.
So you were just figuring out how to do it.
Yeah.
And, okay. But you had experience with the murals.
Yeah.
Which is related.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of airbrushing on the murals, but not a whole lot.
Okay.
And so it's so strange because I'm telling you all these things, and it's like all of these different bits and pieces of the ingredients going together to make some kind of bouillabaisse, that hopefully is going to taste good in the end. So I fell into airbrushing T-shirts.
Yep.
And I got really good at it. And I was fast, and I had to sell people on everything that I did. And I would paint lettering, and I would paint portraits, and I would paint dogs, and I would paint pictures of cars. And then if somebody wanted a mural, I'd do a mural. I'm doing all these things, and I'm kind of doing the special effects thing and trying to figure that out. And then I'm airbrushing T-shirts, and after airbrushing independently for about a year, it's Christmas time, and I'm at a mall, and I started at this one particular location the day after Thanksgiving, and I worked up until the day before New Year's.
So did you have like a kiosk or something?
Well, they did. They sold shirts.
Oh, and you just were hired
printed
as an employee.
And unprinted. Well, I was a subcontractor, so I was my own guy. I'd come with my own equipment.
Right.
And we had an 80-20 deal. So they'd sell the shirt, whatever they made on it, they made. And then whatever I painted, I got 80% of it.
So how was that for you? Was that a fulfilling job?
Well, it was, because I like people. It was almost like performance, because you're out in front of everybody making things right away.
So okay. So are people, when you make something for someone, would they request it and then you make it right in front of them?
Generally. If they wanted something very sophisticated, a portrait, it'd be a few days or a week or
But generally it was performance.
performance.
Interesting.
And there's something about being on the edge of the knife that I like. Like, things could go wrong. I kind of like that.
Okay.
And so, I get through this month or so of the Christmas season, and I'm working 11-hour days, and I'm sick. I'm working through being sick. I'm tired, all this stuff. I get home, and I was just taking the cash home at the end of the day. They'd record it and all, and I'd get my cash and bring it home, and I'd kind of throw it in a drawer because I just wanted to go to bed. And so the Christmas Eve, I'm home that night, and I'm sick. I'm laying in the bed, and it's like the first really good night's rest I'm having. And I thought, well, let me go see what I made. And so I'm 19, right? I'm counting the money out. I made $11,000 in like 4 weeks.
Okay.
And I was like, wow.
Airbrushing T-shirts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now, so I'm going to say what I said earlier about special effects making.
So you're being paid for your skill, not for your time.
Right.
In that case.
Exactly. And I thought, whatever that is, I want more of that.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what I want to do.
That's good advice from your dad.
Oh, yeah. It just kept on showing up. Now, I'm gonna do just a little bit of a side story here, because there's something else that happened around this time that kind of changed my paradigm on life.
Okay.
And I wasn't an athletic kid. My dad wasn't really interested in athletics. I liked to play a little sandlot football. I wasn't any good at it. And so I had this buddy who I'd been in a play with, and he was an athlete. And he suggested that we start playing racquetball together.
Okay.
All right. So I'm 18, and we're going to play racquetball. And we played for like 2 or 3 months straight, 5 days a week for 2 hours. And I was terrible.
Okay.
I didn't win a game. I didn't, it was awkward. It's, you got to get used to where the ball goes when you hit it and the angle of your wrist, and you're running. And so one day I'm playing, and he hits the ball off the front wall, and it's kind of coming toward the back right wall. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I'm going to get this.
Okay.
I was making my way over. I was hustling. And I remember I had really negative thoughts about the moment. And I put my hand out with the racket. I thought, well, I'll just reach out and see if I can do something. And I hit it. And I killed it off the front wall. It died out of the front corner of the floor and the wall. And I had another epiphany, which was, you mean all I've got to do is show up and try? Like, that's all I've got to do. Good things can happen if you just try. Wow. And it flipped a switch on me that started to put some competitiveness into what it was that I was doing. And that hit around the same time as the airbrushing T-shirts and making money as an artist. And
so wait a minute. So you're saying your epiphany was that just showing up is key, or something about competitiveness?
yes and yes. My epiphany was it's okay to fail, right?
Okay.
It's okay to look foolish. What do you want to do? How foolish are you willing to look, and how willing are you to show up to get where you want to go when you don't know exactly how to get there?
So that's fantastic. Now, but I feel like from what you've told me so far, I feel like you have not been afraid. You had not been afraid making these phone calls, showing up at a mall and making T-shirts, airbrushing T-shirts. That seems a little fearless to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to get back into my head back then. I think I was afraid of having to work a regular job.
Okay.
That was the fear.
Oh, okay.
This was all driven by, man, I really don't want to work a desk job somewhere.
Okay. So that's where this not being afraid of trying something new, but doing something creative and doing something that you're trading your skills for money, that is a little bit more of a risky move.
Well, and it felt alive. Like it felt alive to me, because I knew that the desk job for me, it was like death.
Yeah.
Like it was just something that scared the life out of me. But to do something creative, do something that involved potential failure. And I mean, I wasn't aiming for failure, but you know, when you try things, when you're creative, when you're trying anything new, there's potential for that. But
for failure.
For failure.
Of course.
And so what? So what?
Mm-hmm.
So you put that in your backpack and go, "Oh, okay, I failed doing this." And you may have failed for something completely out of your control. You know, it may not have anything to do with your abilities or where you're at that moment. It could be timing. Who knows what it is? But I'd rather have tried something and failed than not tried.
Yeah.
And you just sink.
So, John, do you realize that there are tons of people that don't take action in what they want because they're afraid to fail?
I do.
Okay, so I did not know this.
Yeah.
I just recently realized this.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with like me doing this podcast and the fact that in the past, 7 years, I've made taken some risks in my career and in my life. And in talking to people, it's uncovered that a lot of people are afraid to take risks, afraid of failure. It's also something that keeps coming up on the podcast when people.
Yeah.
So it's really it's interesting that I just realized this, and I think it is really important I think it's important to kind of get over that if you are going to kind of live a life that is true to what.
It's the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Right? Wherever anybody is. Like we all love movies and we like a story with a happy ending, right? But any good story has incredible trials in the midst of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to go through those trials, do you? But we do. That's how you grow, and that's how you experience cool things and see what you're made of and see what you can do. That's exciting.
So it's interesting. I wanted the desk job. So when I was, that's what I wanted. I went to school for engineering.
Wow.
And I went to school for plastics engineering.
Yeah.
So I was planning on working on I don't know what a plastic engineer did, but they would be in an injection molding facility or something. And I was like, I don't want that. I want a desk job. So I did get a really good desk job, and I ended up having, a good career. I worked in the plastics industry as an industrial salesperson, which is actually a really good job.
Yeah.
But I not quickly. I realized that that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
That I needed to do something creative. I did not realize that I needed to do something creative. I was a super creative kid, and then I kind of put the creative part of my brain on the back burner because I fell in love with science. But ultimately, I was always dissatisfied when I was in that first industry, because I thought it was because of a variety of reasons. What I realize now, it's because it wasn't creative, it was transactional.
Yeah.
There was nothing creative. There was no beginning, middle, end to what I was doing. It was just like the same thing day after day, and it was really killing me. And now, being a painter, obviously, I have a vision for what I want to do for a series of paintings. There's a start, a middle, an end, a follow-up. And then I can actually use that way of thinking in other areas of my life. Use that creative, I use that creative approach to other problems and other challenges and other projects. And it's really changed the outcome in a positive way.
That's awesome. And this isn't for everybody. Like I'm not suggesting that somebody who's at a desk job has failed either, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like some people are built for that and they want that, and they're as excited about that as I am about this, or as you are about yours. I think everybody's got to find out their thing, man. What are you living for? What do you want to do? What gets you going? It's so cool that your journey has informed what you're doing today in ways that make you unique creatively.
Yes.
It's awesome.
So, John, tell me a little bit about where you are now creatively in terms of what sort of projects you work on. Well,
so special effects makeup turned into product development. Basically, the nuts and bolts are about the same. You're designing something, you have to make it three-dimensionally, and then you have to mold it, and then make it moldable, and have a piece that's plastic or something as an output, injection molded or blow molded or something. And you're familiar with all of that.
I'm very familiar with that.
So what I found was that Chicago was a hotbed for product design. And through the airbrushing T-shirts, I met toy designers, because there were a lot of toy designers out in the area. And I fell into that world. And what I really learned when I got into that world was, first off, I loved those people. They were a lot of fun. The work was very gratifying. And I found that there weren't a lot of resources that could draw, illustrate, and render like I could.
Okay.
I just had a niche. I was fast. I was good. I'm a math guy. So if something, was going to shrink 3.5% out of the mold, I knew that I had to design it at 103.5%, and then I could draw all the views of a character, say, for Disney, and get things approved by Disney. And so that led me into product development, and then I was doing murals as well. I had a big mural. I had about 108-foot of mural come along.
108-foot mural?
Yeah, it was extensive over a couple of years, a couple of different contracts that I was given to paint at a library. And it was wonderful because I got it. I had the competitive nature. It's like, okay, this job's open. I want to get this.
Okay. And
they wanted some samples of my work, and they wanted, a description of what I was going to do. But what I did is, as I said, that's not good enough. Like, I'm gonna render components of the finished mural. Like, I'm gonna show them what I'm gonna give them. And so I did that, and I won the job, which was stellar. And I was like, I got this job. And I was like, oh no, I got this big giant job. How am I gonna do this? So I was talking to some of my toy design friends, and a buddy of mine said, hey, I've got this lady, Chris, who does all this faux finishing. She works on houses. Maybe you should talk to her. Well, I spoke with her, and then she said, why don't I introduce you to my interior decorators, which she did. And I gave each of them like samples of all the work that I did. And they went out to residences, and I was busy doing murals all year. So I was able to do these little bite-sized murals, make a really good living, and figure out my process, so that by the time the big mural came around to the library, I could jump into it and just go, okay, this is nothing. I'm going to do these in little bits and know what the procedure was. So that was wonderful.
So I feel like your story is a sequence of different creative experiences and jobs that are kind of different, and you sort of just not stumble into them, but they kind of, it's almost like you're paying attention to what's going on.
Oh, totally.
And you react like
totally.
You're not, yeah.
That's totally it. It's they say what luck favors the prepared.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I remember Francis Ford Coppola once said that somebody asked him once, "What are you afraid of all the opportunities you're missing?" And he said, "No, I'm only worried about the ones that I catch."
Yeah.
And so I was always listening to people and I'm interested in people and what they do and where they are. And I think what made me opportunistic is that I was able to see where I could apply my gifts artistically to the needs of what somebody was expressing to me. They may not even know themselves, but I could say, hey, I think I could help you with that. And then bam.
Cool. Yeah. And I think a big part of what we're talking about is just being aware and being present about what is going on in the world, paying attention to people. And I know for me that this has to do, I know that I've changed my attitude with being a little bit less of an agenda with people.
Yeah.
Because I used to be a little bit more, and this sounds awful, but this wasn't like in a horrible way, but the way I would choose who to interact with would be more about who I thought could do something for me. And it wasn't like I was a horrible person,
right.
and I didn't even realize.
It's transactional.
Yeah, and I didn't
right?
even realize
yeah.
this. I've changed that, and now I'm like, you know what? I am going to assume that people are coming into my life for a reason, and I am going to embrace people and pay attention to them, and that's how I decide where I spend my time with people. And it's made a huge difference. And I think it's kind of the same thing as what you
I
were
would agree
describing,
with you.
where you're basically just sort of letting things go a little bit and paying attention to what is coming your way and trying to see how that works with your skills, with what you can bring to it, as opposed to looking exclusively at what you can get from something.
Completely. And I mean, where business is concerned, I'm trying to make a living, right?
Yeah.
So for the most part, it's like, what can I do for you? I mean, this is going to sound, I don't want this to sound bad. What can I do for you or offer you that you will compensate me for?
Yeah.
And I'm not asking you just to give me money. Like, I'll make it worth your while. I'll give you some gold. And, you know, I had one client years ago tell me, she was really happy with the work I was doing. She said, John McDavitt, I'm going to make you a rich man. And it was a pretty good several years after that. It was stellar.
Nice.
And I like to please the clients.
Yeah.
I like to please people. I like to help people. I like to hear how my clients are doing. You know, I've had clients say, you know, call them up or they call you and, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I ask them, how are you doing? I'm okay. Whoa, wait a second. I don't believe you. What's going on? And sometimes they'll say, no, I'm just busy. I'm really okay.
Yeah.
But I've had people open up to me about their marriages, about, you know, illness, all this stuff. And it's like, I get to sit there and listen to them. I get to be there for them.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, John, do you have a couple pieces of advice or guidance that you can give listeners to help them to move things forward in their lives in a creative way or using the creative part of their mind a little bit more?
Oh, I do. I would say, well, first off, if there's something you love to do, and I'm not talking about like, I love to go to the health club and go swimming. I'm a good swimmer. Maybe you can make a living at that. Chances are, you know, there's not a lot of application, right? But, you know, you want to airbrush. Let's just say that's your thing. Figure out how to do it.
Yep.
Figure it out. And don't just give up. You've got to do it. People who are at levels of success, whatever level they're at, they've done something. You need to move. You need to do something. And so, you know, for me, if I look back,
meaning you have to engage,
yeah,
and do it.
yeah. So move, apply yourself, practice it, visualize yourself being good at it, being successful at it. Dream about it. I read once about basketball players visualizing making their free throws, and they get better. Visualize yourself. Imagine. Our imaginations are so powerful. Imagine yourself successful doing what it is you want to do. And it may not be like exactly the dream, but chances are you're going to get closer than if you don't do that. I mean, I don't know if that's positive attitude, positive, reinforcement, but dreams are powerful.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that you're kind of reconfiguring your brain all the time. I mean, we're awake a lot. So
Right.
Our brain is thinking and processing and on a lot of topics for a lot of hours during the day. And if you can use that, and I think that's why like meditation is important, and even in prayer, is if you can use those brain cycles towards something that is positive or thinking or visualizing something, I can't imagine that it's not going to help. I know when I was a gymnast, I would have like my different routines, and that's how I would, whenever I had downtime, even if I wasn't in the gym, I would think of my routine. I would just go over it and over and over it. And in my vision, it was like perfect form. Everything was executed beautifully. And then when I got to the gym and I actually did it, I could kind of just jump right in because my brain had already been going through it.
It's brilliant. I mean, and it does something with your muscle memory, and I mean, it all works together. It's holistic, is what it is. I would also say, whatever your desires are, you need to pursue them, and you need to work hard. I mean, those are like three really important things: desire plus pursuit plus hard work. I mean, you almost can't fail. You almost can't fail. I don't know anybody who's failed who hasn't done those three things. I hear it from people all the time who are successful.
Yeah.
So you go after it.
Well, I can certainly say that in talking to people that are looking at it in the reverse, like I know that people who are successful, they all do those things for certain.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. And then maybe the final thought is did you ever see the movie Unbreakable with Bruce Willis?
yes.
And so he's this superhero, but he doesn't know it. He's got these powers, and the supervillain Samuel L. Jackson, Mr. Glass, is like, yeah, no, you're a superhero. And it's like, I'm not, leave me alone. That's the whole movie, right? Until finally something happens and he realizes he is that guy.
Yeah.
And he says, well, what do I do now? He says, well, go to where people are, and you'll be able to sort it out. So I think that's the thing with your ability. When your skills are there, even when they're not, go do this. Go try and find a practical way to apply your skills to people's needs. Go be a servant. Go serve people. Okay. Huge.
So how can people learn more about what you're up to and what kind of services you offer?
Well, they can go to my website, which is McDavittDesign.com, McDavitt design, singular.com. And I'm on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay, great. This was a good conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Had a blast.
My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.